In comparison to the ever-popular Portra, Ektar is often overlooked by professionals, enthusiasts, and beginners alike, including myself. I mean, I shot a roll back in late 2019 on my point and shoot, but it wasn't until recently, where through this journey of trying to shoot every single film stock that I can possibly get my hands on, that I decided that it was finally time to give Ektar a proper try. So I bought some in the hopes of understanding why it's so often overlooked and perhaps even overshadowed by Portra. And also, just to see if I like it. After all, this is a review, and this review begins with those photos from my point and shoot camera. Ektar has a very unique character as the most saturated, highest contrast, sharpest and finest grained film from Kodak's professional color negative lineup. With a wide range of recommended applications including nature, travel, outdoor, fashion and product photography. It's quite the impressive film, and it provides vivid and vibrant colors, all while still having what Kodak calls the world's finest grain on the box. And put together with its contrast, Ektar, to me at least, is kind of like a cleaned up, sharper version of a consumer stock, which is such an incredibly unique look that you really can't get from any other film. And the first time I tried Ektar out, I thought that was really cool. I really liked the look, particularly in these built-in flash portraits that I took of my friends as I was trying to finish up my roll. It's such a fun, punchy yet clean look. But it's not a style that I typically shoot in, especially when using a more expensive stock. So as I mentioned before, I didn't revisit it until earlier this year on a trip down to Victoria during autumn, where I just couldn't think of a better stock to try out than Ektar. I really couldn't have picked a better location to visit to showcase the vibrant and vivid colours that draw so many photographers to Ektar than the botanical gardens that I went to with my friend Flick. Although for some reason, I decided that day that I'd shoot on a family friend's Olympus OM1, which led to a few shots with missed focus and motion blur. In reality, I just think I've gotten a bit too used to the luxuries that come with my EOS 3000. Though fortunately, Flick shot some sharp images that were also in focus on their Bronica GS1. My favourite photos from that day would have to be these portraits of Flick, just because of how vibrant the colours are. And I keep saying vibrant and vivid, but that's because that's what Ektar is. The saturation just makes for such fun images, especially in the yellows and those warmer tones. And yeah, overall, these images were quite warm, especially for what was the middle of the day. And that in part comes from the ever-present classic Kodak warmth, you can't escape it. But also quite a bit of it comes from my lab's tendency to prefer warmer tones in their scans. I did normalize the color balance a little bit in Lightroom, but there's only so much you can do with a JPEG, and also the warmth worked in some of the shots. Flick's roll, on the other hand, wasn't nearly as warm because it was developed and scanned at a different lab. Though at that lab, there were some other weird color cast issues that I inevitably had to correct. And that brings up something that's not necessarily Ektar's fault, though if you get your images scanned at a lab, as I do, this might affect you. Generally speaking, the amount of experience a lab has with any particular stock will affect the quality of the scans. And from the experience and chats I've had with a few different labs in my area, I found that most of what they're processing color negative wise are Portra and consumer Kodak stocks. Now, of course, this is incredibly region specific and it might be different for your part of the world, but still, generally speaking, Ektar is not really the most popular stock, meaning that scans might not be the best at every single lab as experienced by Flick and myself. But yeah, moving on, for the rest of the roll on the Olympus, I shot it very casually, almost in a point and shoot style as I did with the first roll, not really being too considerate of the images I was capturing, just pointing and shooting. And whilst that led to some lovely moments being captured, honestly, I think it was a bit of a waste to shoot Ektar in that way. At double the cost of the likes of Color Plus and Pro Image, I just don't see much of the benefit of shooting Ektar in those situations because, like I said with my first roll, Ektar is like a cleaned up version of a consumer stock, and in moments where you don't mind having the grain for half the price, Personally, I'd rather shoot something like Pro Image. Not to mention what is perhaps the biggest or at least most obvious downfall of Ektar, and that's the way that the underlying red tones really destroy the skin tones in any type of portrait photography, especially with lighter skin. And yeah, I'm aware that portrait photography is one of the few styles of photography emitted from the long list of applications that Kodak recommends for Ektar, but still, that doesn't mean that it's not disappointing that skin tones are just crappy with Ektar. With my final few rolls shot on my EOS 3000 and a medium format Rolleiflex SL66, I captured a bunch of places and things in different settings that I typically find myself in just to see how Ektar would go. Looking back at these final images, I just can't shake the thought that if I just used portrait instead and increased the contrast and saturation later on an image by image basis, I would have liked a lot more of these images than I do. The flexibility that portrait brings with its neutral images for me, especially in a professional context, is just so much better. I like to have the control and ability to change my mind after the fact, and with Ektar, you don't really get that opportunity. You're kind of set with the look. It's a brilliant stock that gives some really unique images. The rich reds and bold blues really pop in the right moments, and together with that sharpness, there's nothing else quite like it. Though unfortunately in these final few images, the greens were a bit hit and miss. With the deeper and darker greens, they're perfect, but otherwise, Ektar is a film that's designed for landscapes, but in my opinion, not so much for green landscapes, which is a bit of a bummer for me because I live in a subtropical climate. Really, when it comes down to it, I don't think I've yet had the opportunity to shoot Ektar in its best conditions. And judging from the experience I've had so far, those conditions would be anything that favors reds and blues. So I'll definitely have to revisit Ektar at one point in the future. There we are. An Ektar roll, done. But yeah, that's my opinion based on my experience. As ever, I recommend shooting Ektar if you haven't shot it before, just to form your own opinions. And when you do, please let me know how you go down in the comments. And if you already have a lot of experience with Ektar, please leave any corrections and give any advice that you can. Join in the community, learning from each other in the comments. That's what I try to do on this channel, so hopefully we can do that. Subscribe if you want to see more of this face talking about cameras and video and cameras. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Give this video a like if you didn't enjoy it. You know, just do all the YouTube things. Genuinely, it really helps all of these videos do better, and if the videos do better, then I can make better videos. Other than that though, I guess I'll see you in the next one, where I'll be talking about, you guessed it, cameras. Oh.